Okay, so I've started recording and we are ready to go whenever you're ready, Ben.
Okay. Let me get my notes here. Okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm calling this meeting to order at 9:32 a.m. My name is Ben Mesa. I am the chair for the City of San Diego Commission of Arts and Culture Public Art Committee. We are going to do a quick roll call to confirm committee attendance. When I call your name, please unmute yourself and say present. Commissioner Jason Wooper.
Present.
Linda Caballero Sotelo.
Present.
Anthony Graham.
Present.
Melinda Guillen.
Present.
Larry Herzog. Okay.
We're not expecting Larry today.
Okay. Anyung Park.
Present.
And Commissioner Doreen Shoburn. Okay. Tiffany Wei-Ying Bears. Okay. Thank you for your attendance. It has been noted. Also joining us today from the Commission of Arts and Culture staff is Commission of Arts and Culture staff, including Chief of Civic Art Strategies, Christine Jones, Senior Public Art Manager, Chuck Miller, and Civic Art Project Manager, Laura Bullock, as well as representatives from the City Attorney's Office. Before we get into today's agenda, I am going to call on Chuck Miller to run down some of the guidelines for today's meeting. Chuck?
Thank you, Ben. So good morning, everyone. As you've noticed, we're conducting this meeting as a Zoom webinar. An effort to provide greater accessibility, members of the public may join the meeting as webinar attendees in order to provide virtual, non-agenda and agenda comment in real time. Committee members, city staff, and authorized presenters are attending the meeting as panelists, and the meeting will function for them identically to a typical Zoom meeting. As a refresher, please note the buttons on the control bar at the bottom of the Zoom window. The camera icon is to activate your video. The microphone is to mute and unmute. Please remember to stay muted when you are not talking and to unmute yourself when you speak. You will also see the chat window button. Please keep your chat window open at all times, as you'll be using the chat to signal when you'd like to speak. We do recognize that there is a hand raising function. However, we request that you type speak in the chat window for the record, and the chair will acknowledge and requests in order. When wanting to make a motion, second a motion, or participate in discussion, please type speak in the chat box, and Chair Mesa will call on you in the order entered. Please refrain from using the chat box for anything other than signaling that you'd like to speak in order to comply with the Brown Act. Thank you. I'll hand it back to you, Commissioner Mesa.
Thank you, Chuck. We will now move on to non-agenda public comment. The public was invited to submit public comment on agenda and non-agenda items via web form accessible through the Agenda and Commission's website. Members of the public may also join this meeting as webinar attendees. If members of the public have submitted comments in writing via the web form, staff will read aloud public comments submitted per city comment protocol. I will call on Chuck to read aloud any non-agenda public comment or call on any attendees who would like to provide comments. Chuck?
Thank you, Commissioner Mesa. There was no non-agenda public comment submitted via the web form, and let's see. And to those members of the public in attendance, please click the button to raise your hand to indicate that you would like to comment, and I will enable you to speak and send you a prompt to unmute yourself in order. When I call your name, please state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to provide comment, after which you'll be placed on mute again. If you are joining via phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. I will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. When I call on you, press *6 to unmute yourself. Please raise your hand now if you would like to provide non-agenda public comment. Seeing no indication from the attendees, so back to you, Commissioner Mesa.
Thank you, Chuck. In regards to commission business, we did not meet in November. I do not have anything to report at this time. Once again, thank you for your flexibility and patience as we continue with remote meetings. Action, November 6, 2020 Public Art Committee meeting minutes. Chuck, please read any public comment for this item that was submitted in writing and call on any attendees that would like to provide comment for this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Mesa. There was no comment submitted via the web form, and I'll ask attendees to raise their hand if they'd like to provide comment. Seeing none.
Okay. I hope everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes for the November 6, 2020 meeting. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes as they are? If you would, please type speak on the chat window, and when I call on you, verbally state your name and make your motion. Anthony?
Hi, Anthony Graham. I move to approve the minutes from the November 6th meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Any second? Jason?
I second.
Thank you. Okay, so we now have a motion for a second. Is there any discussion? If you would like to speak, please type speak on the chat window. Okay, let me see. Okay, now we will take a vote. I will call your name and you will respond out loud with yay, nay, or abstain. Remember that you do not need to have been present at the October meeting to vote or discuss. Commissioner Jason Wooper.
Yay.
Linda Caballero Sotelo. Okay. Anthony Graham.
Yay.
Melinda Guillen.
Yay.
Anyum Park.
Abstain.
Okay. Commissioner Doreen Shoburn. Tiffany Wei Ying Bears. And my vote is a yay. Thank you. Chuck, please read any public comment for, well, the next item is a presentation for this schematic artwork proposal for Mira Mesa Community Park by Kate Clark. Chuck, please read any public comment for this item that was submitted in writing and call on any attendees that would like to provide comment for this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Mesa. There was no comment submitted in writing. I'll ask any attendees to raise their hand if they would like to provide comment.
Okay.
Okay, seeing none.
Okay. I would like to call on Chuck now to provide an overview of the project and introduce Kate to provide the presentation. Chuck?
Thank you, Commissioner Mesa. And Kate should be joining us momentarily. Laura, could you please share the screen again just for the first couple slides? Thank you, Laura. And thanks once again, Commissioner Mesa. So today we'll be seeing a presentation for Kate Clark's schematic artwork proposal for the Mesa Community Park Public Art Project. Just a reminder about the artwork development process. You're probably familiar with this slide at this point. The city procures an artist. The artist gathers research and engages the public. The artist creates a preliminary idea. The artist creates an artwork proposal. There's further public input. The artist creates the final design. The city approves the final design, and then we move into fabrication and installation. So at this point, we're kind of in the middle of that stairwell, and the Public Art Committee's role today will be to provide feedback on the schematic proposal. This past July, you may recall, you gave Kate feedback on her preliminary artwork idea. So that's been developed over the months, and we now will be looking at the schematic artwork proposal. Next slide, please, Laura. So the Mesa Community Park project is major upgrades to an existing park in Mesa. This is with this image, you can get a sense of where it is with respect to the greater San Diego region. Next slide, please, Laura. And so these upgrades will include, so you can, before I get into that, you can see sort of in the the circle in the center, the upgrades to the park will be occurring in kind of the upper right-hand quadrant of that circle. And those upgrades are going to include new park amenities, a kind of new design to the center of the park there, as well as an aquatic center and a skate park. And so Kate has been commissioned to design, fabricate, transport to the site, and oversee during fabrication for the public art component for the new park upgrades. And so with that, Laura, I'll ask if you could unshare your screen, and I'll hand it over to Kate.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Morning. I'm sorry, but for some reason my video is not working, so I will just describe myself to you. I have fluffy brown hair, and I'm wearing a white sweater, which I wore especially for today, so I'm very sorry that you can't see it. And Chuck, should I just present my PDF?
If you're able to share your screen still, Kate, yeah. Yes. Otherwise, we do have it backed up here.
No, I have it.
Okay.
Okay. So, can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. Well, first of all, I'm so happy and honored to be here. Thank you all so much. It's really exciting to be at a point where a project begins in a big question mark, and there still are lots of question marks, but at least there's some form that is shaping that I'm excited to share with you and get your feedback. So I'm the lead artist of Parkeology, which is a public art project that probably by now you're familiar with since you're on this panel, but we develop site-specific projects about lesser known social and natural histories of space. And so for this project for Mesa Community Park, I know you all already saw the overview of the park, but where I am going to focus this project, and this was through many conversations with the design team, is in this core area here where the playground and community center is. And zooming in a little further, there's a gazebo at the site that is with the phase 2 redevelopment going to go away. And one of the questions that a PAC member had last time we met was, how are people using this site? And so through conversations with the rec center staff, the park staff, snooping on the Mira Mesa community Facebook page, and also talking with locals, meditation groups particularly use the gazebo. Basketball is huge in the park. Tai Chi and yoga happens there. And the rec center also hosts a lot of different workshops, including cooking and ceramics. They had a successful tea party, and they have a Pee-wee sports program and also a 3 to 5-year-old daycare. So the park is really dynamic in its uses, and that's really the best part of this park is how people use it. So going back to the actual site plan, Platt Whitelaw had proposed for this wedge. Right here is the roof of the community center, to situate you, had proposed a shade structure, a pretty straightforward shade structure. That was one big demand for the site by the community, is to have more shaded space. As you all know, San Diego in general is, you know, hot, sunny. And the park, having spent some time there for sure in the middle of the day, you want to be under shade. So what I have been developing is a plan to transform this initial rather simple and straightforward design for a shade structure into an environment to spend time in. So just to quickly share some influences that are informing this project, one thing that's really interesting about Mira Mesa is, in a way, how young the actual city is. 1971, this is what this region looked like. So all of that suburban sprawl that you see occurred in the mid-70s. So we go from what is, of course, Kumeyaay territory to California ranching area where cows are grazing. But before the cows were grazing, pronghorn were grazing as well. So this land has gone through a lot of change really quickly. And I find that really interesting in terms of those really recent layers of transformation. So the thing that to me makes Mira Mesa Community Park the most interesting are the people that use it. There are so many festivals that happen at the park. I had the opportunity to attend TET last year. The Filipino Sun Festival is actually going to happen again in the future. 4th of July is huge. People camp out in the park for days in advance of it. Diwali happens in the park, as well as Holi. So there's a lot of different festivals that totally transform the park. And one thing that I appreciate about that is how these festivals really help track the feeling of time changing and connection to space. And so I was thinking about that in relationship to how sunny the space is and how to potentially link those two things together. So in a conversation with Rizal Javier, who is a local to Mira Mesa and also an amazing artist and educator, she talked to me about how when she was growing up in the region that the place that she hung out in the park were the baseball dugouts, because in the super sunny exposed place that's really flat that you can really just look straight through, the dugouts were the one place that kind of felt like a semi-private environment. And then she also mentioned that she was in a dance team, and shade was at a premium, and so they would take turns to use that gazebo that I showed you the overview of. And she also mentioned that DJs use that gazebo a lot, and to the point where they will fight in the mornings to get there in early enough for their events. So that really got me to thinking of how to kind of bridge these practical demands of space and to make it into kind of an environment that feels beyond function. that incorporates function, but that feels like a special place you want to be in. So what I am proposing is a project that I am tentatively calling the Shadow Grotto. And in the previous sketch that I had shown you in the first proposal, what I had presented was an idea that was steel that would be water jet, and that the designs in the water jet would cast shadows, really trying to channel, you know, all of the abundant sun. After doing a lot of shadow tests, it became clear that it's important to have a vertical surface that the sun can move through. And so in trying to kind of channel what Roselle was talking about of having a dugout to hang out in, and demands for shaded space, and also the need to have rentable space, because the gazebo at the park, people can actually reserve. And park staff told me that it's used for birthday parties and meditation groups, work parties, things like that. So this space is designed specifically to support all of that activity. So the idea is that throughout the course of the day, the shadows will become our positive drawing. So basically the cutouts in the this pavilion shape would then form these glowing drawings on people's bodies, as well as, you know, of course, the ground, the trees, the seating. And to, you know, for some drama, to have these kind of entrances that then your own body shadow interacts with. So this is going, currently I've been talking with an engineer, and the idea is that it would be made out of 1-inch plate steel that would be water jet. It's 15 feet tall and 42 feet long. And having spent some time with some Richard Serra pieces lately of a similar scale, it really does have a strong physical presence, that much material. And this would be in the area between two playgrounds, which of course have a lot of structures, but the only taller thing than this is a climbing net. And so a kid, an enterprising kid or adult, could climb that and have a special view onto this environment. But beyond that, it really will have the most presence. And then one other thing to note, a PAC member made the brilliant suggestion to consult with a feng shui consultant. And I did with a couple of them. And I talked with them about the idea of tilting this ceiling to 95 degrees. And so that is also because that tilt turns this into an interesting arc shape when you approach it, as compared to just being a vertical form. So that formally will become something interesting, but the feng shui consultant also said that that's good because it deflects poison arrows, which is an idea that any sharp 90-degree angle can direct unwanted energy at neighboring structures. So with these cutouts, then there becomes kind of an interesting opportunity for play to occur. And since this structure is going to be between two playgrounds, one focused for younger kids and another playground for slightly older kids, there's going to be a lot of activity here. And that's another thing that the feng shui consultant confirmed was a great thing to do in design in general, which I also agree with, is just trying to concentrate energy. And this was also why the park staff had supported the idea of locating the pavilion here, because for a second we were talking about having another one located at the skate park. So anyways, there's another view of what some of these cutouts could do, where you start to see these snatches of people's bodies behind the pieces that form kind of interesting collage dynamics with the negative space, as well as how the light creates shadows behind it. So the idea is right now the structure needs columns, and so how to use those columns as infrastructure as well. And so there is a need for seating. And so I've been working with the architects to talk about having a row of picnic tables behind. But I think it's important that this space itself has seating so people can spend time with the work, and as well as just have a place to hang out in under the shade, but to still keep an open plan that allows for a lot of flexibility, which I'll get into later. So here's an image that you can get a sense of. At the edge of this perimeter is where the picnic tables will be located, as well as trees providing shade for those picnic tables. And the architects are also going to put in a row of barbecues here. And so the idea is that there'll be kind of, you know, people can have parties here, they can set up their food, and then there'll be this open space, you know, for you to do whatever in. So this is at 8 a.m. And so the shadows, of course, are going to roam throughout the course of the day. So here is an example, again, at 8 a.m. of how the shadows interact with the space. Another note that the feng shui consultant made is that it is a good idea to have these trees behind it to kind of ground this structure. And I agree with that, to kind of help it feel like a pocketed space with all of these trees that surround it. And the architects, Platt, Whitelaw, and Schmidt Design also agree that that was a nice addition. We're still talking about what those tree types would be. So this is at 3 p.m. Where the shadows roam towards the center of the plaza, and at 5 p.m. in July. So throughout the whole day and the year, of course, these shadows will transform. The concentration of them for sitters will be at 12 p.m., which is also the time when people need the most shade. So here's a sense of what it's like when you're underneath it. And so depending on the sky type, there'll be kind of interesting color dynamics. And one thing that I want to note here, and I'm going to get into this later, but the imagery that you see here, as well as, of course, the colors, but I want to focus on the imagery, is placeholder imagery. And the imagery is going to be developed through a series of community workshops. So I just want to note that, because what you're seeing here is just to give you a sense of how the negative and positive shapes relate to each other. There will be points when the shadows will create light shadows over the form itself. So hopefully throughout the day and the night, there will always be some type of new dynamic to experience. So here are some color tests. And one thing that, again, going back to the feng shui consultant, she noted something interesting, which is that there's a strong water element in the park with a pool, a strong earth element, of course, with all of the landscaping. And so she suggested having a warm fire or air color. So that's something to think about. And going back to here, you can kind of see what, you know, a warm color does form an interesting complement to a sky tone. So I am really open to the color, and this is something that I'm not going to be living with this work every day. And so to me, it's really important to have community feedback about that. And so that's one thing that we'll be also talking about for the design of this piece, is what should the color be. I will say that I think that there's two choices to make. It's the pigment of the concrete circle that kind of grounds the structure, and then of course the color of the paint. And my instinct is to have them be within the same hue, so an analogous color scheme as compared to a complementary color scheme. So now I just wanted to share a bit about a future in which maybe 152 of us could have a dance party underneath the structure, which right now just looks like a diagram of contagion. But I did work with the square footage to just find out exactly how, what different types of interactions this environment could accommodate. So we have a dance party where it's recommended everybody to have 4 square feet. For Tai Chi or for practicing dancers, a rule of thumb of about 100 square feet would allow 6 people to work under here. For parties or workshops or anything like that, we have room for 18 standard size folding tables. And it is worth noting that Christian Haupt, the Mira Mesa Rec Center staff director, he mentioned that there's discussion about bringing Wi-Fi out to the playground area, which would be great for if workshops were to happen here. And again, 13, we have circular tables as well here. And then people do use yoga in this park. So we've got 28 people that can use the Shadow Grotto for that. There was a meditation group that used the gazebo specifically. And so this could serve as an environment for them. 24 people in a circle conversation or more potentially. So just to share with you also about ideas for how this space could be lit at night. I'm thinking about Terrell's piece, Twilight Epiphany, one of his exterior pieces. And so I'm working with a lighting consultant to develop a way that that horizontal plane of the Shadow Grotto will be uplit, and that the color of the light fixture can slowly change over time. So you have this color gradient that's always creating a new wash of color. So here are some examples about that. And this one here kind of gives you the strongest idea of how we're talking right now about lighting it, which would be to have a row of linear lighting embedded in the ground that creates a wash of color. And here's just a quick diagram of that. This is going to adapt because this is the lighting consultant's drawing, but we also have been talking about, you could also bring a row of that linear lighting underneath the bench cutouts, since the bench will be made out of the same material as the structure with water jet patterns, then you could have light moving through those at nighttime. So sun, of course, is a big feature of this piece. And so I was thinking about ways that, since the piece will likely be some type of monochrome color or variations of one color, then how to bring in other types of color into the piece and just some more dynamism. So I have been working with some prism designers with the idea that you could embed potentially in some of the openings prisms that would then create rainbows of color when there was daytime and sunlight on the surface. And so this is going to take some more experimentation, which I'm excited for. And at nighttime, it would then kind of create a twinkling star effect. So as I mentioned, the imagery that you see here is stand-in imagery. And so for what I'm proposing, and I have been partnering with Aja on this, is to host a series, a 6-month-long series of imagery design workshops for the Shadow Grotto. And if you're not familiar with Aja, their mission is that they are a compassionate space for young people, activists, visual artists, and educators to engage critically with issues that affect our community and realize our collective liberation through participatory storytelling and the documentary arts. So one thing that is incredibly fortunate is Rizal Javier, who I mentioned before, who was talking about her experiences in the dugouts. She's from Mira Mesa, and she's also the director of Aja. And so we have been meeting for months now, planning what these workshops can look like. And so the general idea is that there are so many layers of life that have physically or metaphorically touched the land that we now call Mira Mesa. So some of it's visible, like nature, bodies, astronomy, and some of it's invisible, like family stories, cultural stories, and histories. And of course, I'm not the expert of that at all. And so the idea is to build a structure that helps people with focus on the Mira Mesa High School, because it's across the street from this park, to be involved in what that imagery should be. So with it being COVID, we've been talking about how to do this online and on site potentially, and Aja has these great boxes that they put together that have all of the supplies that then get mailed to each workshop participant. And so we probably would do the same structure, whether they're mailed or dropped off at Mira Mesa High School for then the students to pick up. And this is just one example of a workshop that we would likely use, neighborhood blueprints, where people create cyanotypes that sort of document physically all of these different shapes from their home. So how the structure of these workshops will work is once a month, we will have workshops led by an artist and Aja educator, and also local of Mira Mesa, Maria Rios Mateodaikis, and we'll be once a month having these workshops, and then also once a month having a guest speaker. And this guest speaker model is also loosely based off of another Aja conversation series called Hyperlocal Visions. So I'll be working to do the outreach to invite speakers, and who these speakers are, we have a tentative list that I'll be able to share with you once we have final approval, but these will be educators, local festival organizers, historians, kumeyaay historians, and educators, astronomers, biologists, so really wide array of speakers. And the workshop participants, as I mentioned, will have focus on various art clubs within Mira Mesa High School, and Rizal Javier, who as a local of Mira Mesa also has a running list of people that she would reach out specifically to help invite in to participate. So the general structure of this is from basically the winter of 2020 to the end of school for Mira Mesa High School. We'd begin with our first workshop. Then we'd have a guest speaker who would share. And then from that, we would have a Q&A conversation, and then a design conversation about how the actual physical design of the Shadow Grotto is going. And this would be an opportunity for the guest speaker to chip in, as well as the workshop participants. So throughout the workshops, we're constantly having conversations about how the actual form is developing. So nothing is coming at the end as a surprise. Then 2 weeks later, we have a workshop inspired by themes that the speaker discussed. And this would be private and led by Maria Rios Mateodaikis. And depending on what is possible, some of it will be on site in the park and some of it will be online. Then from the imagery that is cultivated from these workshops, whether it be cyanotypes or journal entries, it can be written or visual imagery that's produced, then Parkeology will process that imagery and start to create, in a way, a library of imagery that will be collaged together to form that final composite of imagery. Then we go back to the next round of the guest speaker, Q&A, conversation, and design convo, which then we share how this imagery got processed. Go to the workshop inspired by that, so on and so forth. So this is the structure for how these workshops would occur over a series of 6 months. So to get into some of the materials that we'll be working with and also talking about as a group in the design meetings, we'll be working with primarily steel, water jet steel, which can, as we see with the De La Torre brothers piece, create really detailed imagery that can really accommodate any type of imagery that is produced from the workshops. And then quickly, the idea is that the piece will be painted. with a low VOC paint system. So we'll have a primer, a top coat with the pigment to be determined, clear coat, and then the piece will have to be painted on site. So we're gonna have to add a brush and roll additive, which will also be useful for future park staff to be able to just quickly paint over some areas that may have graffiti on them or something like that. So there's a maintenance plan, and the clear coat, Matthews has a lot of information about ways that it can help, but basically with the clear coat, then you just use a solvent and can wipe away graffiti. So for long-term maintenance, I've been thinking about Calder's La Grande Vitesse for this piece, because basically this piece in Grand Rapids for 50 years just got repainted, and it had over 30 layers of paint on it by the time it was stripped down and repainted. And that's kind of what I'm imagining for this piece, which to me, I think will be kind of nice. I like the way the layers of paint feel once they develop a kind of thickness and fleshiness. So it is ferrous material. I understand that it's not going to be this pristine object over time, and that's kind of the point. It's in a public space. With that said, Matthews did say that sometimes their paint doesn't actually need to be replaced for 20 years, depending on exposure. So more to talk about that, but that's just a general overview. So some examples of light fixtures, and then just to share a bit about the ADA plan. So for a cane sweep, basically you have 2 feet and 3 inches of anything underneath that is within a cane sweep range of motion. And so the projecting edge of the bench will fit within that. And then all entrances will be way beyond the 3-foot minimum of an ADA door clearance, ranging between 6 feet wide and 4 feet wide, as you see here on the vertical plane of the entrance. So this is just a preliminary fabrication plan, working hopefully with TA welders who do a lot of welding for roller coasters, and who even, fun fact, made Goofy's chimney at Disneyland. And so I'm hoping that they have the capacity to really work with these very large plates of steel that will weigh about 6,000 tons. Oh, excuse me, not tons. That would be crazy. 6,000 pounds each. Just to briefly share a installation plan. So design development, basically for the first half of 2021, and then working on construction documents kind of in tandem with that as our design conversations progress, with final construction documents being this summer. And then all fabrication and installation will occur between 2022 and 2023, which seems really far away, but probably won't be. So that's everything. Thank you all so much. And I'm excited to hear your feedback and thoughts.
Okay. Any comments from the other commissioners or the committee members? You can type speak and we can call on you. Okay, chat. Anybody?
Looks like we have Jason.
Jason. Okay. Jason?
Hello, thank you, Kate Clark. That was a fantastic presentation. I really love the proposal. It's awesome. I love how dynamic it is, how it interacts with shadows and lights and even observers. I love that it has built-in benches as well. That is really, really cool of a feature to add to that. And I will save the rest of my comments for later.
Thanks.
All right. Anthony?
Hi, Kate. It was so great to hear about this project. And Yeah, I'm just so impressed. Like the whole thing was so robust and really preempted a lot of questions I might have had. But one thing that I was still curious about, just because we got this kind of like aerial view of the park and then these really close-up design images of the piece, and I'm curious how it like interfaces exactly with other areas of the park, and mostly I'm curious about like how one approaches it. Because one thing that I think that is really exciting is that you have this like vertical plane that you know, with all of this kind of like patterning will be so exciting, and then this the way that the back is like simultaneously enclosed but open through the pillared system is great. But nonetheless, I'm just curious how like from what angles will people really be kind of like primarily approaching entering the piece?
Yes, that's such a good question. I'll just do a brief screen share
Sure.
to show you all. So this is an earlier plan of the architects, but it doesn't change in terms of how you approach it. So basically, this is Mira Mesa Boulevard, the main road, and then New Salem Street curves into the park. And so what they've been trying to do with this plaza plan is to sort of concentrate and create a core space in what is otherwise a pretty dispersed environment. And so the primary entrances that people use is this one pathway up here that goes in through parking here. They walk in, and this is really kind of a core entrance here between the rec center and then what is the pool. And so people are primarily going to be kind of flowing in this way, and where the Shadow Grotto is going to be placed is here. So people are largely going to be kind of moving in this way and then walking up here through this sort of promenade area where you have a playground here, and then these are game tables. So they're kind of trying to design space, intergenerational use space. So my feeling is that you're going to kind of approach it, and at first it's going to look almost like a mural backdrop to everything else that's going on. And that's part of the reason why I think having it be one color is strong, because especially between the two playgrounds, there's going to be a lot of color in the playgrounds. And so one thing the feng shui consultant described, which I like, is that it's kind of going to be a centerpiece of a bouquet of activity. So yeah, I hope that gives a better sense of sort of the approach. And that's such a good question. And I do hope that I can come amidst all the COVID time before installation happens to really spend more time in thinking about what that's going to feel like.
Yeah, that was super helpful and I think really well thought out and articulated. And just to say also, like, one of the things I really appreciate about the project is, I mean, precisely that it provides shade and this, you know, this like dugout feeling, I think is really great, you know, in civic spaces, which can often feel, you know, exposing. It's nice to offer another form of experience.
Okay. Janet?
Hi, thanks. Kate, that was wonderful, and I can't wait to see it. Usually I make notes and have lots of questions, but you really answered all the things. I mean, I was curious, what about night, and what about a place to sit? And so you answered all those questions. A really great presentation. And thinking about the woman who spoke of a semi-private space in the dugout, I could just imagine a couple of teenagers sort of standing inside against the wall, visible, but not really. I think it's great. It's a great answer, and that neighborhood could really use that kind of big, colorful creativity. I love it. And I like the idea that you would come around that rec building and see this in front of you. Really, really clever, really great. I'm so excited about it. Can you do it tomorrow?
Yeah.
Well, but we really need those workshops because otherwise I feel like the imagery will be pretty arbitrary. But thank you. And what you said about the teenagers, yeah, my hope is that it can be a space that like in the day, like kids can be playing at it, and then like later you can make out underneath it. Like that's my hope.
I was just thinking that, and make out spot.
And then one other thing is you were asking about the seating, and I actually had this thought just a couple days ago, so I haven't integrated it into the design. But right now, the column design, those are round columns, but I've been thinking about actually, it might be better if it's if they're flat planes, so then it serves as a backrest. And then it would actually have a slimmer profile too. So that's one thing I'm gonna do some tests with.
Okay. Melinda.
Hi, Kate. It was great to hear. Just imagining you in your white sweater. It's really great to see how this has developed. Like everyone else is saying, I'm impressed with the level of detail and thought into every aspect of consideration, and I would probably expect no less from you. One thing that also does definitely come through, just to echo Janet and Anthony, is that as knowing part of your practice, this idea of kind of still creating a private or intimate spaces, meaningful spaces in public spaces, which is a very delicate and oftentimes not fulfilled in a lot of these sort of public plans. But I really think that that's exciting. One question I have, and maybe this could be, it's more of a comment of consideration for the workshops, or also maybe you could talk about it in relation to previous projects that you've done, which are very community oriented, workshop oriented, is about the symbols in particular. I was wondering, will the symbols be kind of abstracted? And I ask because I think in this open kind of community sourcing approach, there can often be like a desire and a strong desire to integrate like sacred symbols, potentially culturally conflicting symbols among different groups of people, and how that would be approached or mediated or talked about.
That's a great question. And in a way, I think sort of the most important challenging aspect of this project to mediate. And so that is part of the reason I feel like I have a pretty good instinct with editing, but I'll just give you an example of how I'm not going to rely on myself for this, because as I was putting forward imagery, I was, there's a Diwali festival there. So I was thinking about, the lamp shape that is used a lot. But I was talking with my friend who's East Indian, and it's like incorporating that imagery for me is the equivalent of having a piece of public art that has like a bunch of Christmas bulbs on it, like it's totally kind of, yeah, the specialness of that imagery comes from the specificity of the time that it's used, and that it's not year-round imagery. Mm-hmm. And so I think a big part of that is through inviting in these special guest speakers who are kind of going to have like a broader perspective than me, or perhaps even like the primary high school students that are going to be participating, is to get that level of expertise of imagery that they think would be appropriate if it is culturally sensitive, and then what is more private. And so that is also part of the reason why I'm so happy to be working with Rizal and Maria with this, because I really want to have their expertise as amazing artists and also as locals. So it's just going to be a lot of conversations, and but I do kind of want to avoid that feeling of like it's a small world, like multiculturalism. So the more specific it can get in terms of how we're designing the workshops, so people are coming at it maybe through the specificity of fabric textures from their homes, or plant types that are in their backyard. To me, that is more meaningful than having, like what you saw in the image, like a dragon from the star charts.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it sounds great. And I know how you are able to kind of manage these different constituencies and then ultimately kind of edit into this like meaningful end. And like Janet, I wish it was just up tomorrow already. I'm really looking forward to it. I feel really lucky to even have been part of the selection panel for it. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Yoon?
Hi, just to add to the previous discussion, I love that we're trying to figure that out because I think that public art that is, you know, both inspirational and in that it's inspiring creativity, but also aspirational, and it has this contrapuntal element, you know, where there is a level of specificity, but it's through that level of specificity that you reach a kind of universality in that we all live under the stars. And going back to your previous presentation of, you know, time and space, that's the one thing we all have in common. And so in trying to locate this universality within specificity, I think that makes this project really special.
Mm.
What was I saying? Something, Nary Ward group material, something was my notes. Wait, hold on. I know something in there. No, but you know, it just harkening back to some of the kind of more like socially engaged art practice that's going on, and you know, artists that you know, expand the authorship of this project into a community, and extending that ownership beyond, I think, is really, really special. That's all I got.
Thank you. Janet?
Hi. It just occurs to me, having lived in San Diego a long time, and probably everybody else has experienced this, the way neighborhoods, the population of neighborhoods changes over time. So I think it's smart what you're saying about not making, not tying this too specifically to any one, what do I want to say, demographic or a group, because over time, you know, we may find that like today, Mira Mesa has a large population, say, of Filipino people, but could be in 25 years, a lot of Chaldean people would live there, and those images wouldn't have the same resonance for them. So what I liked about the images that were on there now, like particularly the entrances with the making it look a bit like you were walking into a tree. I wonder if that's something that we should be thinking about, the fact that populations and their cultures within a neighborhood change over time. And since this is a piece that will be there long after we're gone, or at least me, you know, is that something to think about?
Yes, those are the neighborhood has already changed in the past decade or so from primarily Filipino neighborhood to and Vietnamese to there's a large East Indian population there now too, and the neighborhood largely speaks way beyond English. It's a younger population, and yeah, for me personally, I would never want to, I mean, in my hometown, perhaps I could propose something, but even then it's so complicated. And so one thing that I've been thinking about though, is with the role of playing with shadows, it's like shadows become this interesting hearkening shape of forms that used to exist in the space. And so to me, I like the idea that in a way those shadows could sort of be a projecting shape for lives that had lived previously on the location. And that is one thing that doesn't change. And so that's not to say that I want this to be like a historic piece or something like that. But I think an interesting conversation that will happen with the workshops, and that I know Maria, the educator, she's really interested in too, is the role of how a shadow feels and how it feels when it's projecting upon our own body.
Also, I love the prisms.
Yes, yes. Kate, this is Ben Mesa, and you know, it's been a really rough week, and with everything that's going on in the world, you know, and then you show us this. It's astonishing. And it is absolutely beautiful. You healed me for the week. And there's a universality about it, despite that it's site specific. It's like Yoon said, we all live under the stars. The trees are our friends. So this is going to be a landmark. It's going to be a timeless piece. And I thank you very much for your creativity and developing this structure. One thing, the only comment that I have is in your presentation, it really pops in terms of color and of course value. And I hope that in making it real after construction, that it maintains some of that boldness, especially with the ground plane. I'm an architect. I know what happens. We have dreams. We make all these renderings, and then when they pour the colored concrete, it just looks, it can look bland. I hope that you can maintain some of that contrast that makes this piece so lively. And
that's
those
really
are
cool.
Yeah, those are my comments. Anybody else have any more? Okay. Thank you very much, Kate. Very much appreciated. And thanks everybody for your input. And then Chuck, what are the next steps here?
Just briefly,
Sure.
I do want to say that if any of you have any more thoughts after this, I'm just putting my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear if anything percolates for you after this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Chuck, should I say goodbye at this stage?
Yeah, well, you're free to go. I'm just going to kind of go over some quick next steps with the project. So, but thank you so much, Kate, for that presentation. And so, yeah, the next steps for this project is, so Kate was going to begin, we're going to be looking at what our options are for an artist open house, a way to share this schematic proposal with the general public once again. But in addition to that, Kate is going to begin working on a final artwork proposal. So she'll be taking into account your comments for today and working out kind of some final details for this. And we'll be coming back to the Public Art Committee for a recommendation, hopefully sometime this winter and spring. So yes, that's kind of what we're moving on to next with the project. And once again, thank you, Kate. And I'll hand it back to you, Commissioner Mesa.
Yes, thank you. Let's see, we are in the phase where staff reports, and Christine, do you have a report?
So good morning, Commissioner Mesa and
Yes.
Public Art Committee. It's nice to see everyone today. So thank you for all that really great feedback for Kate. We're excited for her project, and glad you all had some great feedback for her as well. So just a few quick updates from staff today for you all. Wanted to make sure that you were aware of the city's recent creative economy study. This was a study that was released a little bit earlier this fall. It's the first of its kind in San Diego to really study the impact of creative industries in the San Diego region. So it was a study that was a collaboration between the Commission for Arts and Culture and the city's Economic Development Department in partnership with the San Diego EDC, the Economic Development Corporation here. And so the focus of the study was really examining for the first time over 71 different creative industries that are in our region to really understand and start learning more about the creative economy here. Obviously, this is a sector that's made up of nonprofit and for-profit businesses and individuals that produce cultural, artistic, design, goods, services, products, as well as intellectual property. So what came of the study, interestingly enough, was that it's an $11 billion industries here, the creative economy. So it's a very impactful. So this is a study that will help us over time start to look for trends within different creative industries and really look at ways of how we can grow and expand creative economy here in San Diego's future. Particularly with COVID, we obviously want to look at growth for future. And this is a great study and a benchmark for us to start looking at that in ways. So I wanted to share the link with you all. The study is available on our website. One other thing to note, which I think is pertinent to this committee, is that, obviously creative industries involves visual art, performing arts, as well as architecture and interior design. So those specific kind of sub sectors or industries within the creative industries. So interestingly enough, visual and performing arts, as well as architecture and interior design, are some of the largest of the creative industries locally. So I thought that that was interesting and relevant for you all to know. So again, I'm going to share that link. So I encourage you all to take a look when you have a chance of that study. So let's go to the next slide for a second. So next up, we just really have one more report for you all today. And as you all can remember, Public Art, Public Sphere, which was that cohort that was established to really be a capacity building opportunity for artists looking to enter public art. There was a competition as part of that cohort for City Commission for one of the artists to be able to design, fabricate, install a two-dimensional artwork. If you recall, it's going to be on a wall on the breezeway corridor at the Civic Center, along the wall that is between the Evans Parkade and like the vacant downtown Johnny Brown spot that kind of leads to A Street. So we're really excited to report that the city has commissioned one artist from that cohort and is newly under contract with the city for that project. So I'm going to hand it over to Laura, who's going to announce the artist and share a little bit more information about the artist and her past work.
Thank you, Christine. Hello, everyone. So I'm having a tech issue, but I'm trying to click through. Okay, so I'm just going to read a little bit from their bio. So Collective Magpie is a nomadic art entity dedicated to extending the studio into public space by working directly with and alongside local participants to create art. Through taking public space into the studio and working between different global sites and citizens, the art produced yields hybrid objects and new cultural forms, often pointing to conflicts of the present day. Founded in 2001 by Korean-American artist Tae Won and artist Melinda Barnadas, a Canadian-born US immigrant of Peruvian and Trinidadian origin, Collective Magpie works within the genre of social practice, which privileges collaboration and participatory action. So most recently, their piece, Who Designs Your Race, which we'll see in the next slide, was featured in El Museo del Barrio in New York's triennial Estamos Bien. So that's exciting. And they also received their BFAs from the Art Institute, the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, and their MFAs from UCSD. And as Christine mentioned, they participated in Public Art, Public Sphere. And so what we're seeing right here, their work is on the bottom half. You see the feet. So this was actually their first public work that they did under the moniker Collective Magpie in 2007. Or 2008, they formed officially in 2007. So this was at the Bata Shoe Museum in Toronto. And they had 20,000 people show up in one night to create this collaborative painting. So it's a large paint by numbers. So people of all ages and ethnicities participated in this project. And this was kind of the work that really sparked their interest in working publicly and engaging in, what we call today social practice. So this is the next piece that's featured in the triennial that I mentioned. It was also featured in our show, at the Central Library, Fear No Art, Civic Engagement, Histories, Currencies, which also features a lot of work from the city's public art collection. So it was kind of prescient that, the work was in that show. So here is just some ephemera. And then this is another component. So this piece was initially, the first iteration of it occurred in 2018. And Who Designs Your Race is a survey that Collective Magpie created through the modification of the US and Mexico census surveys. And these surveys were chosen as when the artists were both living kind of at the borderlands between San Diego and Mexico. And so this survey gives agency to the individual by allowing them to author their own racial identity. And the complexities inherent, it deals with the complexities inherent in the concept of race itself. And so they've stated that, quote, they are interested in transforming a tool most commonly used to obtain information from the public into a tool that is intended to create shifts in thought and reveal new possibilities for understanding our fluidity and interconnectedness as people. So, so what you're seeing here is outside of the Museum of Contemporary Art, where they hosted this event and they have this dome. Inside the dome are people actually taking the survey. And it's really important, a part of their practice is they always pay participants. So they took the money that they would have received as payment for this project and gave it to the participants. So it's a pretty cool aspect of their practice. And so this is just another example of the last example of their work today, but I encourage you guys to Google them and look at their website and check out some other projects. But these are some slides from, they did a series of transnational seminars. So this one was called Art and Action in the Public Domain. So it directly dealt with and engaged with politics of the US-Mexico border wall. At this point, Trump was in office, and there was some hate speech that was happening on the UCSD campus, and so in this project they work with students. So the students sort of, inspired kind of the direction that this project took. So so this allowed students to engage with the topic of kind of the border. In whichever way they wanted. So it was explicitly political, in other words, and specifically targeted the US-Mexico border. So it was in this, what we're seeing, especially in the top left image, they were inspired by the Theater of the Oppressed. And so the session that you're seeing up there involves students creating street theater pieces that were performed for both San Diego and Tijuana audiences. So yeah, so that's just a sampling of their work. We're really excited to see what they come up with for the Civic Center Plaza space, the Breezeway project. Thank you.
Yeah. So Commissioner Mesa, that concludes our staff update for you today.
Ben, if you're trying to say something, you're on mute.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Laura, very much for your report. And Thank you, committee members, for your attendance. This was a great meeting, very inspiring. And our next public meeting will occur on January 8th. There may be a conflict with this meeting time, so staff may poll for alternates. Wishing everyone a safe and pleasant holiday season in the meantime. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Happy holidays. Have a good weekend,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Stay safe.
Thank you. Yeah.